And so I think a lot of, like, I think, way back when, it comes down to that. It comes down to the physical superiority of black people against black men against white men. And then, also the fear, really, once there was slavery, God, white people they know they're wrong. So when you know you're doing something that's morally wrong, of course, it's always going to haunt you. It's like somebody who kills someone and gets away with it. They're always going to be haunted by that. They're never going to have peace of mind. So I think the fear came more within, like, the culture and, like, this whole widespread fear and this need to really contain and subjugate black people was because they knew that it can't last forever. Sooner or later, these big, strong, angry black people are going to, you're not going to, sooner or later. So that fear, I think, is where most of it came from. The guilt.
I always think this isn't just affecting black people poorly, even though it just on the surface it looks like, oh, the poor black people. And I don't mean poor like class, but I mean like this is a really tragic situation. But I think in a less severe way, it's a tragic situation for many white people too, because
they're just in denial.
Yes, they are. But is there a lot of moral compass not being set right because this thing has been accepted? And I'm not saying that I think that anybody who knows anything about me knows that my life has been very white.
Yeah, me too.
I embrace all those people, and I don't
we're having
think
kind of like a conversation that's like negative
right.
on white people, but we're just
I'm just trying to be honest and say why this concerns me. So because it's detrimental to everyone, and I think it doesn't look like it's detrimental to white people. But sometimes I think that that's probably the worst thing. Because, I mean, not everybody believes in God, and I don't really think there's some, like, judgment day, but I think there's a moment, like, when you die where you, like, see the truth, and I would be so sad to realize that, like, you were really off base. And I just think the white thing, unless you're really willing to be open and realize that this whole thing, white and black, is a big fallacy.
Yeah.
And to talk about it and to realize that you do get something good out of it if you're white, I don't know. That to me seems like almost the biggest tragedy.
I agree. And that reminds me of, like, my family, and I don't know if you have any similar situation, but, like, so, like I said, my mom, she's, like, really liberal, and she really thinks color is beautiful and ethnicity is beautiful. And that's because she is from a white area, and I don't know what it is. Maybe because she didn't have any boobs, and she had a butt. Okay, maybe because black guys are loving it. She has like big calves and a booty and a flat chest. So, I'm sure white guys like her, my dad's white, my stepdad's white. But maybe that was why. I don't know. Black guys hound you after a while. You're like, okay. Oh, yeah. So my mom, she's, like, went to high school. I think she graduated 76. And, like I said, during that time, there was this huge, like, surge of black is beautiful. People were graduating from college with degrees in anthropology like crazy. Everybody wanted to go to Africa and explore and this and that. There was a huge surge in anthropology education at that time because of it. So I think because my mom grew up on that, what she thought was cool was Jimi Hendrix, Stevie Wonder, all these black people and these, in this movement in the 70s of afros and this and that. That's why she's so open. And she's not a bigoted white person whatsoever. Whereas my grandmother, and I love my grandmother with all my heart, right? Well, she was born in the 30s. And when she was coming up of age, it was like the early 60s, the late 50s. And so everything was crispy white. Everything was cookie cutter. Everything was suburban.
And segregated.
And
legally. Institutionalized.
Exactly. So her idea, her perspective is so different from my mom's. And I don't think either one of them is a bad person on any level. It's more of how the environment and what you came up. Because when my grandmother was a kid, yeah, being segregated was just how it was. She didn't have any control over it. She didn't think about it, you know. And when my mom was a kid, you know, having cool black friends with afros was how it was. You know what I mean? So
does your mom have siblings?
No.
Okay.
But, like, my grandmother and, like, you know, my whole white side of my family, and this is another thing that goes back to, like, when I was younger, how I would feel sometimes. Like, you remember Obama remember when Jeremiah Wright?
Yeah, the race speech.
Yeah, and he had to come out and address Jeremiah Wright's comments, okay? And one of the things he said was, and I really applaud him for trying to get through to people. He wasn't very successful. But one of the things he said was, you know, my white grandmother has made comments in front of me about black people that made me cringe. Yet, I love her completely. And I don't judge her for that. That's part of how she was brought up and whatever. And that's something, as a biracial person, you come to understand that you accept people, that just because when you're biracial, your family, a lot of your family have really bigoted ideas about race, but they still love you. And it's like, okay, how can, if you love me, and I feel that, but yet when you see somebody, a black dude walking down the street, you get all nervous.
Right.
It's like, you know, or you have all these negative stereotypes. And so there's a difference between racism and bigotry. And I think bigotry comes more from fear. You know, there's things you see on TV, and it's insularity. Like, my mom was exposed to black culture. She loves it. My grandmother wasn't. She doesn't understand it. And that's just, you know, and my grandmother has black friends. If they work in Birmingham with her, great. But if they live in Detroit, oh, hell no. You're not going there.
Right.
And they probably have guns, and they'll probably steal your purse. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, and it's not even about black. It's like, they're the same way about, like, my aunts my grandmother's sisters who lived in California. Oh, well, they lost their jobs because their plant moved to Mexico. They hate Mexicans now. You know? It's just, you know, it's just like, we find things that, oh, I hate that, you know, and we latch onto them as human beings, and it's not what we should be doing.
I feel like there's just this dogma, especially in this country, that because of race, that this is how things are and this is what you expect, even though I get what you're saying about class, and that does have a lot to do with it. I just think that's something it's easier somehow to overcome.
Oh, you think? I don't think so. I think that's much harder. And I think now, like, maybe if it was like 50 years ago, I think where we are now with, like, a biracial president, and also, just to say a note on Obama, that was, like, the proudest day of my life when he won. And I think he's a really great person, an honest person, and a person that means well, and a person, and because half of it is because he's biracial. He wouldn't be the person he is today.
No way.
If he didn't feel like he had to go find who he was, and understand that through other people. That's why he went and he worked at those community centers. That's why, because he wanted to be in touch with who black people were, because he didn't have a connection with his family. And so that, and that's what my grandma would be like, oh, you always take the black side. We're your family. No, I don't take the black side. I take the side of marginalized groups. I am Cherokee Indians. You know how much pain I feel for what has happened to Native Americans? I could cry over it. Like that. You know, if I think about it too much. Or slavery, or just what has happened to people. And that's a part of me. Like, I can't ignore suffering of people. And I just don't see a lot of white people suffering at the hands of black people or Native Americans. And that's why it's like, okay, well, somebody needs to do something about this. But for a lot of white people, it's like, oh, you're just against us. Or, you know, they don't even, it's like, if you're, like you said, if you're monoracial, it's really hard to step out of who you are and see from behind someone else's eyes.
Right, but it wouldn't be, because if this whole thing wasn't so manufactured to make it seem like, oh, that's an other. That's somebody I don't relate to. That's somebody who isn't as good as me or doesn't have the same thoughts, feelings, needs. What do you think about Obama? You know, he's the first black president. Do you take issue with that?
Oh, yeah. What I was going to say about that was, like, I've gotten in big arguments and alienated myself from people because over this thing, like, I don't like when people say he's black. He is black, but he's biracial. And his whole family's white. He was raised by white people just like us, or no, like me.
Right.
And so to say he is just black is just retarded, and I find it offensive, personally, because that's what I'm saying. My grandma doesn't understand. I'm not against white people. You know, I'm offended if people try to act like, you know, this guy the other day. He's like, "Oh, what's your da-da?" I said, "I'm multiracial." "Oh, you're black." "Oh, your dad's black." "Oh, you're black." Black is dominant. I said, just stop talking to me. Like, you're lighter than me. Away from me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, who are you to have to tell me who I am and what I am? But that's like, there's people that, like when you're in high school, that messes with you when someone's like, you're not white, you're black. Oh, I better start acting black, you know? But as far as Obama, it does bother me when they say he's black, when they don't acknowledge that he's biracial. It also, like, what you were saying about the tragic mulatto, okay? Well, there's no tragic mulatto. Fact is, being mulatto in this country makes life way easier than if you're black. No doubt about it, you know? Having the lighter your skin is in this country, and it's better now, but like in the 80s, God, skin color was such a big deal. Mm-hmm. And I'm very aware of the privileges that I've gotten from people I don't know, because of the fact that I'm like a pretty light-skinned girl with long hair. Mm-hmm. You know, I just know that growing up, I had people treat me better. You know, and that's not my fault. Nope. And there's a lot of black girls that don't like light-skinned girls. So I don't got on the internet. I read someone had commented, and they were like, "Oh, let's just remind everybody that it was white people that raised Obama. Okay, that he turned out good because white people." Whatever. My whole issue around my biracial is that biracial people or multiracial people are a unique and distinct ethnic group. And they're not recognized as an ethnic group at all.
Right.
Okay? Not institutionally and not socially, really.
No.
And that's where you get a lot of biracial kids who get all screwed up in the head because they're looking around, well, where am I?
Where am I? It's like we don't exist. Then you feel worthless, and then you feel weird, and then you try to be anything because, well, I am not anything. Exactly. I'm not anything, so let me try to be whatever else is convenient or fun or will make people accept me.
Yes. And it's institutionalized. When you fill out government forms, you know, they want to know what race you are. And usually, like now, like in private institutions, they'll give you options to write in what you're multiracial. But still, when it's a government thing, like I was at the hospital, the subsidized hospital, so they get money on their forms. There's no, you choose one, you know?
And I think, though, when you can write it in, when whatever is the darker thing that you write in
probably
is what pile they put you in after you've left the room.
Basically, we need to be recognized as a unique ethnic group. We need to be recognized because no other ethnic group has the experience that we have. This conversation can go forever.